What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Ratch Report. It is time to talk about the Toronto Raptors because they have made additional moves to their roster. And in addition to that, we do have to speak about Bobby Webster's interview as well because he talked a lot about who the Raptors could potentially have on this roster moving forward. But he also talked about Brandon Ingram as well, which we've got to discuss in today's video. So if you're ready to watch, make sure to hit the subscribe button. And with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel. We actually got two shout outs because they were both of these two people commented the exact same time. So the shout out for today's video goes out to Aaron. Thank you so much for supporting this channel through your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. And Philip, thank you so much for supporting this channel as well. Appreciate both of you guys for supporting this channel and all of the things you guys do for this channel. I always appreciate it. But in terms of the Toronto Raptors, we do have to talk about that because the Raptors yesterday in separate deals acquired PJ Tucker and James Wiseman, and it was announced late last night from Bobby Marks that the Toronto has announced that they have waived James Wiseman. Wiseman had a team option for next season. He is currently out for the year. Toronto Raptors have two roster spots open. Now, this was a little bit surprising for me personally, considering that the Raptors do not have a big man on their roster. I mean, aside from, of course, Jakob Poeltl, they traded away Kelly Olynyk, and Orlando Robinson was on a 10-day contract, which is now gone, his second 10-day contract. So the Raptors have no more big man. Now, I understand that he was out for the season. He felt like he was one of those players that, I understand why the Raptors waived him, but if they gave him the opportunity and to come back next year, he just seems like a very serviceable big that you could use at the backup position. But again, as I talked about yesterday, he doesn't shoot the threes. He doesn't protect the rim, and maybe that's what the Raptors were looking for in terms of quality in their big man, right? So again, I understand why the Raptors did what they did. They definitely want to evaluate some of the options they have on the open market as well, but I definitely didn't expect them. Again, it was one of those cases of the Raptors gave up a top 555 protected to the Indiana Pacers in return for cash and James Wiseman. So that top 55 is not really ever going to convert, considering that the Raptors are unlikely to be a top five team in the NBA in the next couple seasons. So the Raptors just created an additional roster spot, but that wasn't the only move that the Raptors made in that trade because they also acquired another player, PJ Tucker, and it looks like PJ Tucker is not returning to the Toronto Raptors. So Bobby Webster announced this in his interview as well, but this was being reported by Underdog NBA that PJ Tucker won't join the Raptors. Now, that really shouldn't be a surprise. It was always a trade to get a second round pick for Davion Mitchell. And I did have someone ask me yesterday in the comments, why wouldn't you just keep Davion Mitchell? Well, one simple reason, guys. Second round picks are very valuable. Just having draft capital in today's NBA is very valuable because you can use them to acquire role players in the near future. Now, it's not always about I think when we talk about acquiring second round picks, it's not always about trying to draft players in the 40s or trying to find a hidden gem that can help you in the future. You do need to keep in mind that draft capital is viewed as something as a very valuable asset to have. So in the near future, in the next year or two, whenever, the Raptors decide they want to trade their future second round draft picks, that's where those kind of come into handy, right? So instead of throwing in specific players of your own roster that you want to keep, you can throw in second round picks to entice teams to give up a certain role player as well. So, in terms of the open roster spots, so because you saw the first tweet, it said the Raptors now have two roster spots open, given that they did trade both Kelly and Bruce Brown for one player in Brandon Ingram. And then obviously separate deals, they traded Davion Mitchell for PG Tucker as well, which is now very interesting because this gives the Raptors a lot of options with a couple roster spots open. And Bobby Webster did speak about this during the interview, suggesting that they could look to convert Jamison Battle from a two-way contract to a rotational contract. Now, why would the Raptors do this? For one simple reason, and one simple reason only: as a two-way player, there's only limited games you can play in during the regular season or just during the season at all. And the Raptors and Jamison Battle are getting very close to that limit. So by converting Jamison Battle from a two-way to a regular contract, what this allows the Raptors to do is really just give him free minutes, free range of playing him every single game, and just see what you really have in him. Obviously, he's looked very impressive in the short spans that we have seen him in different times, but he hasn't been able to play consistently because of the limited games that he is allowed under the two-way. So by doing this, you give a young player that you drafted or not drafted, undrafted, signed him as an undrafted player. You give him more opportunities to see what he can do as a full-time rotational player, and you give him more minutes. It gives you a good time frame to evaluate some of the young players you have. And in terms of the second roster spot open, then you got someone like Orlando Robinson, who's on a 10-day contract, but his second 10-day contract is now over. Now, what you can do by sliding Jamison Battle from two-way to a regular contract is you've got now a two-way contract open. And what is the Raptors' desired need right now is obviously a big man. Even with Jakob on this roster, you don't want to play Chris Boucher full time at the center position. Jakob is out with injury currently, so they definitely need Orlando Robinson. And do not be surprised if they end up converting him from a 10-day to a two-way contract as well. And our final piece of news I would like to discuss here is regarding Brandon Ingram. And shout out to Blake Murphy because he was reporting that Brandon Ingram is waiving his trade bonus. According to his sources, he would have been owed roughly $2.1 million by the Pelicans, but counting against the Raptors cap and tax. But for he's foregoing that here. Raptors have amped breathing room for rest of season deals. Nice start to the relationship. Obviously, I'm really, I'm not saying that I don't see NBA players doing that, but for Brandon Ingram to do that, just waive his $2 million. Even though he's a millionaire, he's made a lot of money through his NBA career, but $2 million is still $2 million. And for him to waive that just like that to a new team he has just been traded to, that speaks high volumes of Brandon Ingram, right? So very nice of Brandon Ingram to do that. And like Blake Murphy noted, great way to start a new relationship. But also Bobby Webster did speak of Brandon Ingram, why the Raptors treated him and their plan moving forward, which was very fascinating because one thing Bobby Webster said during that interview was he'd rather trade for players, see how it goes, and then sign them to a contract. Now, obviously, the Raptors will sign Brandon Ingram to a contract regardless, but he pretty much compared treating players during the season and signing them as opposed to going out and getting them in free agency. And then he just said in free agency, it's so much more unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen. And with a move like this allows the Raptors to kind of see how that player plays, how he fits into their team. It gives them a longer period of time to evaluate. And if you ask me, that is a very smart move, considering that the Raptors are not players in free agency, but also just considering that how many teams have we seen out there go out, sign free agents, and then it just doesn't work, And especially when you're paying guys like Brandon Ingram big money, okay, there's definitely risk involved. Just ask the Chicago Bulls, Zach LaVine, they went and signed him in free agency, and look how that kind of turned out for them, right? So it's better to do this than to go out in free agency where you're going to be competing with a lot of other teams. You're going to be competing with other teams in terms of not only how much money you're spending, but also terms as well. So this gives the Raptors not only time to evaluate, but this also gives them the first kicks to re-sign Brandon Ingram as opposed to other teams getting, an opportunity to sign him as well. So very intelligent in terms of tanking, though. A lot of fans were concerned about that, and Bobby did address that today as well. Now, Bobby Webster did state that he is going to spend the rest of the season. The Raptors are going to spend the rest of the season to really evaluate some of the young players, give them some playing time. And this does not affect the tank based on the Brandon Ingram trade. Of course, you still want to see Brandon Ingram play some games. You don't want him to sit out completely during the entire season and then sign him to 38, $40 million for, 3-4 years. But obviously the Raptors will get to do that. But he did say, Bobby Webster, that he is big on this draft class. And the Raptors still plan on tanking, which is good news for, a lot of us fans. I expect a top 3 pick, the have our Cooper flag, Hope still there, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, whoever your favorite players or whoever you want the Raptors to draft. So it seems like the Raptors will continue to tank and obviously give the younger players a lot of minutes. And by moving someone like Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk, of course, you free up a lot of playing time for some of the younger players as well. So very fascinating about the Raptors moves as well. Again, I'm very interested to see what your thoughts are. Are there certain guys on the buyout market? Ben Simmons did get waived by the Brooklyn Nets, and I'm not saying he's going to come here and sign because he's already rumored to be interested in Clippers, Rockets, and the Cavaliers as well. But are there other names, that could potentially get waived that you want the Raptors to possibly go after in the buyout market? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, how many seasons has Chris Boucher played in the NBA since Chris Boucher has survived yet another trade deadline? Is it A7? Is it B9? Is it C6? Or is it D8? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.